Good Monday morning, everyone. It's Mayor Chris Jensen here with another edition of Mental Health Monday coming at you on Pi Day. It's Pi Day, Kristen Boyce. I have Kristen Boyce, licensed therapist and owner of Pathways of Healing with me this morning. Good morning, Kristen.
Good morning, Mayor Jensen. Thanks for having me today.
My pleasure. Thanks as always for giving of your time to better our conversation around mental health. As I said, it is Monday, March 14th, which is 3.14, which is Pi Day. I saw people going all over crazy on social media about that. So all the little reasons to celebrate and talk about fun days. But hope you all had a great weekend. The sun is shining. Chris and I were just talking about that. I feel like the weather has maybe shifted a little bit. We are maybe heading for spring here in the Midwest. I hope weather wherever you are watching is wonderful. So again, we are excited to tackle some really great topics today. We're going to talk a little bit about defense and defensiveness and how we get defensive. And I told Kristen before we get started, this is a really topic close to home at my house. I get very defensive during arguments, not just at home. Probably, I'm sure our staff here at the City Hall would tell you the same thing. So I'm working on it. So we'll dive into that here in a little bit with Kristen. But before we start, we always start with an exercise called square breathing. Something I love to do, getting oxygen to your body, releasing all those tensions and those bad toxins out of your body. And to walk us through that exercise, Kristen, take it away.
Okay, this is something I want to encourage everybody to do. So today you're going to want paper and a pen, and then this is a takeaway to practice. So when we practice and we're triggered and we want to get defensive, we can go to the breath and center ourselves before we respond. That's why this is so important. So feet on the floor, we're going to inhale through our nose for 4, we're going to hold for 4, and then slowly release out our mouths for 8, like you're cooling a cookie, cooling soup. It's important that you have that slow exhale, big, deep inhale. So let's practice together. We'll do 2 breaths. Big, deep inhale through your nose. And release.
It's drooled.
That happens. That means you're releasing. Okay, another big deep inhale through your nose. And release. I can feel my shoulders really letting go on that last one. And this is a good time to stretch anything that you feel tension or tightness in your body, to let that really have a place to be released from your body. Otherwise, you're holding it in, and throughout the day, that's where your aches and pains are going to get worse. So stretch it out, move it out, breathe it out.
Right. I love that. I love that. Like I said, I breathe every day, all day long. I know that sounds silly, but not just breathe, intentionally breathe to help calm my body before I go into a tense meeting or go home to beautiful, wonderful kids, making sure that I am centered and relaxed and ready to take on the next challenge. So, hey, before we get started here, if anyone has any questions throughout the morning or just wants to say hi, feel free to chime in on the chat. My good friend Patricia Bratton's already said hi. Good morning, Patricia. But feel free to ask any questions. If we don't know the answer, we'll find some folks that maybe could help you out. If you're watching this on repeat or later on, if it's not a live show, which we have thousands of people that do that, feel free to chime in on there. Our staffs will make sure to monitor the page and get any questions answered to you. Or like I said, if you just want to say hi, let us know you're watching. We love that as well. So it's nice to know we're just talking at computer screens, but I know there are folks that are out there watching along and learning a little bit. So I really, really appreciate that. So yes, we're going to tackle defensiveness today, which I'm really excited about. Just for me, I'm excited to maybe learn some tools to help us work around that. Like I said, as everybody does, lives in a stressful time right now. There are people that critique things that maybe I'm doing in my job, Kristen. I'm sure people critique the way you maybe run your business or whatnot. My kids certainly have critiques on the way I cook macaroni and cheese. Julie Jensen at times critiques the way I make the bed. And lovingly, I'm just completely teasing there. But, we all have critiques all the time. And it's how we accept those critiques or don't accept those critiques, or the way we react to those can be a challenge sometimes in our relationships. I know I certainly get defensive at times, probably more often than not. So, Kristen, I would love for you to kind of talk about kind of why we get defensive, and then let's kind of dive into how to identify that. How do we approach it better? I'll let you lead the way.
Okay. First of all, defenses are universal. So everybody has a way that they have either been conditioned to or has been worked in the past to kind of protect themselves from emotional pain and discomfort. So when we are hurt or we're afraid of being hurt or we have an uncomfortable feeling come up, we have these protective mechanisms that we've learned over time to try to protect us from that discomfort and that emotional pain. It's almost like we're trying to discharge it, or think of it as a shield. So I see this a lot in couples where someone will say, I feel sad because you're on your phone all the time. Now, they don't come usually with that. They say a you statement like, you are always on your phone. And so the partner goes, well, you're on your phone even more than I'm on my phone. So they go into blame, or they go into pointing out the flaws of the other person. That's an example of defenses. We all have them. The essential part that we're going to be talking about, we're going to name some defenses, and then we're going to talk about how do you identify them and make a decision to work through that response. So you're responding rather than reacting, because that's the key. Reacting is like an automatic response. Responding is a calm, centered place before something comes out of your mouth. And this is really hard because in my home, we have a constant feedback loop. And I created it. So I have to really take time and to center myself when my kids give me feedback. I've decided they can tell me the truth about how they feel. And Mark has too. So we're in a constant feedback loop. And I'm telling you, it is not easy. And in our relationship, we're in a constant feedback loop. So let's identify some defenses. So we're all clear. This is where pen and paper is important. So you can kind of have a list of which ones do you identify with and start recognizing. Okay, so here I have a good list. Joking. Do you joke when you're uncomfortable, or do you make a sarcastic comment back to diffuse conflict? Like you're really uncomfortable with conflict, or you're trying to lighten the mood. And so a lot of people use sarcasm and joking. And there's a time and place for that. But when you're in the middle of someone giving you feedback, or someone's maybe they're sad and you make a joke, sometimes what that does is it creates disconnection and defensiveness. Okay, so smiling. So I'll have clients come in and they're telling me something really painful, but they got a smile on their face. It's almost like that's how they've learned to mask that pain, is they're smiling through it. And underneath it, they're almost moving away from that pain. So smiling can also be a defense when you're really sad. Laughing. So some people, when they're uncomfortable, they'll start laughing, but they're really it's because they're uncomfortable and they don't know how to process it, or so they're trying to discharge it. So they start laughing. Perfectionism is a defense. So if I just say it perfect enough, if I just sift through exactly what I'm going to say, just perfect enough, then the other person won't get upset with me. Or if I just do something just perfect enough, then I can avoid blame, shame, and judgment. And unfortunately, that's not the case. So not listening can be a defense. Being on your phone. So let's say someone's talking to you and you're really uncomfortable and you're on your phone. Constant apologizing. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. One of my kiddos did that for a long time. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, okay, what are you feeling underneath it? What is going on? Are you in shame? Shame, saying I'm not good enough, I'm defective, something's wrong with me. Are you sad about something? Are you scared of being rejected? What's going on underneath all that apologizing? So over explaining and over apologizing can also be a defense. Criticism. So if you're really critical of somebody else, maybe you were criticized as a child and now you go on and you're really critical, so you nitpick everything. Well, underneath it's probably anxiety. You probably have some anxiety and shame, and instead of processing that, you're focused on outward, what's going on the outside for someone else or for yourself. Procrastination. So if we put something off, or avoidance can be a defense, where we're avoiding hard things, we're procrastinating. We have this huge to-do list and it feels so overwhelming. We don't even know where to start. So we avoid it. We avoid hard conversations because we get so uncomfortable. Avoidance is a huge defense. We can get into spacing out. If you've ever talked to someone and they're just like, you're here, but you're not really here, you've spaced out, that can also be a defense, spacing out. Constant busyness. And this is one that people don't think about, but they're constantly busy. Like they have to be doing something all the time, because then if they're not busy, then they're going to have to sit with that grief, that sadness, that fear, that discomfort, that anxiety. And so they're constantly busy. Achievement. So someone that constantly is trying to achieve success. We're moving away from connecting emotionally to trying to feel good about ourselves. So we're constantly reaching that next pinnacle. And these are ones that a lot of people don't think about. Shut down. So when we're shut down, we're withdrawing. So a lot of times when you see someone withdraw often, it's because they're trying to protect themselves from somebody's dysregulation, someone's anger, someone's hurt, someone's, maybe projecting all their anger onto the other person. And so they really go into withdrawing. They try to run away kind of from the situation. One of the other ones is judging ourselves, constant judgment of ourselves, feeling like we're not good enough, irritability, negative thinking, and workaholism, working too much. Drinking is a defense. I mean, we could go on and on. That gives us a nice list to work with to give you some ideas. Gaslighting is another defense where we talked about it last time we were together, where you focus on, someone will say, well, I'm really sad about you using the phone. Well, and that gaslighting would be, well, you're on your phone all the time. Well, look at what you do. I mean, you think I'm on my phone? Let's look at your history on your phone. And so we don't own our part in it. And so how do we work through defenses? Did you identify with any of these?
Yeah, that's funny. I was going to pause you there because there are several. The first one you said, joking sarcasm. I try to be quick-witted during serious conversations and throw in a joke there. To your point, I'm always like, I'm just trying to lighten the mood a little bit. But I've been working through thinking about how that is perceived on the other side. If there's multiple parties in a room or something, somebody might think that's funny and lifts the mood, but somebody else may be very offended by me making a joke during that time. So that's when I kind of do. And then what was the constant busyness. I'm always doing something, whether at home or at work, constantly moving and not, to your point, maybe that's a way of kind of being defensive here a little bit is that area. So those are the two that really struck a nerve with me.
That stuck out to you?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. My go-to can be blame too. We didn't talk too much about that, but I can kind of go, well, look at what you've done. I can kind of twist, or I can try to start rationalizing or minimizing like something. Yeah. So if one of the girls says, well, you were yelling, I can kind of go, I wasn't yelling. Like, what? Well, you were getting really escalated. And so I can start, instead of just hearing more about what they felt, like, tell me more about that, I can kind of start going, well, you were doing this. And so I'm minimizing and rationalizing and kind of dismissing what they're saying.
Yeah, and I can be at times the king of like, well, I'm sorry that you viewed my tone as yelling. Well, so like, or like, I didn't really care for what you said there. Well, I'm sorry that you took it that way. Well, no, maybe it's just, versus just like sitting in it and like the way they took it is the way they took it. And the way my tone of my voice is the tone of my voice. And I need to be willing to hear their side of it and how they perceived it.
Exactly. And so the minute, it's so hard. So the minute I start wanting to say, well, you were getting really dysregulated. We use that word in our house. Well, you were getting really kind of intense. Instead of me replying like that, the key here is, why we were doing the breath at the beginning? This is the practice of going back to the breath and creating the pause and slowing it down, because when we're anxious or we're uncomfortable or we are afraid of somebody not liking us, afraid of being not accepted, rejection, or abandonment, we then will want to come back, or we could go into a shutdown freeze response. It could be one of the two. So there's many options here. We might go into a fawn response, which is also a defense response. It's a survival state of trying to people please. That was one I didn't list on the mini list. People pleasing is definitely a defense to try to survive and be accepted and belong. And so My key when I get feedback is to take a deep breath, feel my feet on the floor. It's very intentional. This is not easy to do because our brains we're wired to either shut down, go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And when we do that, we then create disconnection with the person in front of us because we didn't hear or attempt to try to understand where they were coming from, even if we don't agree with it. So when we don't agree or we're afraid of those things, rejection, judgment, blame, shame, abandonment, what we do is we go into I don't want to get hurt. I'm not going to get hurt by you. Instead, boundaries or what's okay and what's not okay, those keep us safe. It doesn't mean that the person's going to do exactly what you say when you set a boundary. But defensiveness is really cutting you off from connection, which is what you really want.
Yeah. So I guess I'm twofold. I want to talk a little bit more about what we can do as individuals to, kind of, if we're in a situation, know what our defense mechanisms are and how we can kind of, besides taking a deep breath, and kind of what else can we do for ourselves. But then also if we are in a conversation with others or a coworker or a child or a spouse, and it's constant defensiveness, maybe somebody, smiles through all the time when you're going through conversation, whatever, pick one of these defenses. How do we address that with them without them getting more defensive? So I don't know if you want to start on the individual first, then we can kind of transition to how we react to it with somebody else.
Yeah. Okay. The first thing I want everybody to do is write down, when there's conflict, what are the 3 things you do? When there's conflict, what are the 3 things you do? And so mine might be I blame. Mine might be I get critical. Mine might be I start talking. I start talking as a defense on minimizing and rationalizing why I did what I did. So those might be my 3. And those are indicators. Those are your invitations to notice your pattern on what are your 3 go-to defense mechanisms when there might be feedback or conflict. Feedback can get perceived as conflict, even though it isn't all the time. And so if we're real uncomfortable with conflict or uncomfortable conversations, what do you do? Like, what are your go-tos? What are your coping strategies when there's disagreements? So one might be I get on my phone. One might be I go and watch TV and binge TV. I get busy cleaning, whatever that looks like. Those are some defense mechanisms. So that helps you. And there's many more invitations here we could do to unpack those. What did you write down?
Yeah, I said when there's conflict, I justify. So kind of talk through why there's conflict. I joke to lighten the mood, or I fill the noise. So I just start talking and constantly continue talking and hope for heads to nod and me to solve the situation.
Yes. Isn't that powerful?
Yeah, that's good to know.
It's good to know. So self-awareness now I can start noticing that when my body and your body's response. So if someone starts giving me feedback, whether it's my husband or my kids or somebody else, it doesn't matter who, I can feel my pit in my stomach. That's my first sign. It might be shortness of breath. It might be tension in your shoulders. It might be in your chest. It might be your head starts hurting. It might be your throat starts feeling tight. Your breath starts changing.
Oh no, we lost Kristen Boyce, I think. I hope she comes back. So I am going to wing this show for a little bit. Kristen was talking a little bit about signs of defensiveness. So if you are in a situation where you are feeling critiqued or not necessarily judged, but getting feedback from others, those are some of the signs that you might feel within your own body. Again, I think Kristen talks a lot about knowing your body and knowing what is good for your body, and being able to identify that. And welcome back to the show, Kristen Boyce.
Good.
I was going on a tangent about knowing your body and listening to the signs within your body when it comes to defensiveness. So now let's turn it back to the professionals like Kristen to continue talking through that.
Yeah, so there we go. I could see you and hear you, but you couldn't see me. Who knows technology?
Well, this show is much better with you and not just me.
Well, I don't know about that, but did you have a body response when you lost?
My stomach got a little butterflies in the stomach. And so that would be a body response for there. And then I just started I started filling the noise. So, you know, just filling the room with some noise.
So here's the thing I wanted to point out about
that. Was that done on purpose? Did you do that on purpose?
I did. I was like, let's see how this goes. Let's put this out in real time.
Hey, golly.
So the talking actually can be helpful at times. So we think sometimes defenses are all like bad. They can be adaptive, but a lot of times they're maladaptive. So the key here is that's why I had you do the questions. So then you become more self-aware of what are your tells to know you're going into defense. Only you can decide that you want to slow it down and work on your defenses. So it's a choice. It's like, okay, I'm going to start working on your own triggers. If you know your triggers, you're going to be able to work on your defenses. 1, awareness. 2, deep breathing. 3, unpacking so you can recognize your tells when you're going into defense. And 4 is consistency over time. What does that mean? It means that I'm willing to consistently look at my reactivity, my body responses, my intensity over that trigger and make a decision to work through it. And oftentimes we have a dotted line to a rooted issue. So for example, if you weren't hurt as a child, or you were met with defensiveness as a child, chances are you have an unmet need there. And the need to be heard, understood, and paid attention to is still there. We all have that. We all want to be understood, but we have to be willing to try to understand ourselves and other people. We wait for someone else to understand, and I'm like, they don't have the tools. They didn't get it either in childhood, not to blame our childhood, but to have some insight. You got to practice this yourself. You've got to offer yourself that acknowledgement and that nurturing. So then you can offer it to somebody else. Now, go ahead.
I was going to say, is it fair to say, you know, as we're working on these things, I want to kind of set expectations correctly, that you're not going to, you know, sit here and work on your breathing and whatnot, and then all of a sudden you're going to be just done being defensive, right? I mean, I think we need to reward, like, you know, it's kind of like when you're on a diet and like you have 3 meals a day, 2 are really good, 1 was crappy, and so you're like, well, to hell with it. I'm just going to eat the rest of the donut box the rest of the day because the day is shot. Well, no, rein it back in, you know, and so you may leave a situation where like, you know what, I was really trying to work on my defensiveness. I did well for a while and then I did get a little defensive there. Can you talk a little bit about like, that's progress, right? Am I right on that?
Absolutely. Okay. I don't want to make this like you're going to just do the breathing and never get defensive again. I get defensive every day. That's just part of the human experience. I think you said something really important. It's recognizing, and then I call it a circle back or a rewind, where I'm like, ooh, I will go back and I'm saying, thank you for sharing that with me. I noticed I got really defensive and I could see that was hurtful. How did that feel for you? That's how you do repair work. That's how you circle the wagon back and acknowledge and take ownership for your defenses. And that models for your children and for other people what it looks like to own and take responsibility for and do an appropriate apology. So I loved your apology example because you're like, I'm sorry you feel that way, right? And that would be what we would go, okay, how we would do that differently might be like, I see that caused you some hurt and I'm really sorry for hurting you. See the difference. It's such a powerful difference. So we will not do this perfectly. You will not clear out all your defenses. It's just won't happen. So that was a really good point, because it won't be like, I'm going to work on this and never get defensive again. No, because we have protective parts of us that don't want to get hurt. And that is normal. And it's recognizing then when it becomes maladaptive, when it becomes an issue in relationships, that blocks you from having a deeper connection with somebody. Defensiveness can really block you from connecting with your children, your partner, your friendships, your coworkers. And you've got to recognize what are your go-to defenses so you can start nurturing those defenses, having some self-compassion and working through them and get to the other side. So then you can hear feedback and you can recognize when you go into shame or anxiety or fear and go, it's okay. They love me and they were trying to give me some helpful input to create more connection between us.
Yeah, I wanted to point out there was a question Deb asked here that I thought was really striking because it hit a nerve with me here. But she said, I tend to, quote, assume, end quote, I know what someone is saying, quote, beneath the words, quote. I like to learn better skills when it comes to clarifying questions. That's great. I can't tell you, Deb, how many, and I'm just as guilty of this too, but I've been in many meetings where people assume they know what I mean by something, you know, even in my relationships at times. And I'm like, it's a full-time job knowing what I'm saying in my head, you know? So can we touch on that a little bit? Because I think that's a really good, when it comes to communicating and working through our defensiveness, those clarifying questions I think are really important.
I love that, Deb. That's a great,
awesome job, Deb.
Great question. And the key here is saying something like, help me understand or tell me more about that. So those are two key phrases when you need to know more. For example, when somebody tells us something and we're convinced we know what they're saying, and yet you're really confused by it. So you're like, I'm feeling confused. Can you help me understand that a little bit better? And then if you follow curiosity, this is the key in relationships. Follow your curiosity. And what I mean by that is, let's say you're not sure if someone says you're emotionally unavailable. People are like, I have no idea. I mean, couples will say that, and the other person's like, I have no idea what you mean by that. And then I'll say, well, ask a clarifying question. So help me understand what you mean by emotional availability. What does that look like to you? What would be different? So sometimes we don't have the language or we don't have the vocabulary, but your curiosity can lead you. Now it's your tone of voice. So if you're like, well, tell me what you mean by that. Okay, I'm going to feel defensive and scared to interact with you because of your body language, your tone. You can see I'm crossing my arms. We got to soften. I work with a lot of people. I'm like, you're coming across as angry, but you're really afraid underneath that. You're coming across as angry because you're scared. You're coming across as angry because you're in shame. So we got to soften. We got to connect with those core emotions. What are you feeling? Sadness, fear, anger can be a secondary emotion. Disgust, maybe you're feeling excited and it's coming across as intense. And we've got to start recognizing that and using an I feel statement in there when communicating with other people. Not like I feel like you never take out the trash. That's a judgment. I feel sad because I feel scared this pattern won't change. See the difference?
Yeah. Yeah, that's, like I said, that's a really good question, because I do think that our instant reaction to follow up can go one of two ways. Even if we think we're being thorough in our follow up, if you will, the tone and tenor and the way you phrase the question can be very, very telling. And I'm a big believer in I learned so much more by other people talking. And so if you let the person you're with continue talking, you will get a better understanding of their factual thoughts, right?
Yes. And I think we can all learn to, once you start doing this work, when you write things out, sometimes when you're having a hard conversation, I say, write the person a letter. And they're like, I'm going to write. I go, trust me, you will have so much more clarity in what you're trying to say when you write it out before you get it out. And some people can get flooded if we go on and on and on and on. And I say, write one sentence, two at the most, and then communicate it to the person. So you're clear. Like, what are you feeling out of those core emotions? And then what is it in one sentence you're trying to say to the other person? Because that's the other thing. We get lost in and we're so lost in what they're saying. And even saying it, could you say that again, maybe in one or two sentences? Because I'm really struggling to process. It's not you, it's me. You could say something along those lines to get more clarity.
That's great. That's great. I'm going to ask you to put a pin in this for a second, because we're going to come back in a couple of weeks. I want to talk a little bit in 2 weeks about identifying defenses in others and working through that. So that's how we'll start in 2 weeks. So if you love this conversation as much as I have, come back in 2 weeks and join us with that. We're just almost out of time today, because defensiveness is such a big, big topic, and it's something we deal with every single day, and we're never going to be perfect at it. So just remember that. Our goal here today is to give you some tools to be better at it, and that's all we ask, is that you try. So Kristen, this topic has been incredibly enlightening. Like I said, in 2 weeks we'll come back and talk about working through defensiveness in others. But before we wrap up here, if somebody's in crisis right now, doesn't know where to turn, where can they go?
1-800-273-TALK. Please, please reach out for support. It's available. Or you can text if you don't want to talk on the phone, 741-741. And then on the City of Noblesville website, there is a whole page of resources available to you. So please know that you do not have to walk through pain alone.
Absolutely. And again, join us in 2 weeks. We'll dive a little bit more into defensiveness, as well as some other great topics. There's a lot going on in the world, Kristen, as you all know. I've been trying to keep the news off at home because you taught me that a couple weeks ago, just to kind of reduce the anxiety amongst my family. And I would encourage you to think about that as well. So stay safe, Noblesville. Kristen, thank you again for joining us. And we'll see you all back here in 2 weeks for another edition of Mental Health Monday. Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you.